From the Pep Radio Newsroom, this is the one and only story we are covering today. Donald Trump has promised sweeping action in a second administration. The former president and now president-elect often skipped over details, but through more than a year of policy pronouncements and written statements outlined a wide-ranging agenda that blends traditional, conservative, dare we say fascist, approaches to taxes, regulation, and cultural issues with a more populist bent on trade and a shift in America's international role. Trump's agenda will also scale back federal government efforts on civil rights and expand presidential powers. A look at what the Trump administration of the future has proposed. Build the Wall from his 2016 campaign has become creating the largest mass deportation program in history. Trump has called for using the National Guard and empowering domestic police forces in the effort. Still, Trump has been scant on details of what the program would look like and how he would ensure that it targeted only people in the U.S. illegally. He's pitched ideological screening for would-be entrants, ending birthright citizenship, which almost certainly would require a constitutional change, and said he'd reinstitute first-term policies such as Remain in Mexico, limiting migrants on public health grounds and severely limiting or banning entrance from certain majority Muslim nations. Altogether, the approach would not just crack down on illegal migration, but curtail immigration overall. Trump played down abortion as a second-term priority, even as he took credit for the Supreme Court ending a woman's federal right, to terminate a pregnancy and returning abortion regulation to state governments. At Trump's insistence, the GOP platform, for the first time in decades, did not call for a national ban on abortion. Trump maintains that overturning Roe v. Wade is enough on the federal level. Trump said last month on his social media platform, Truth Social, that he would veto a federal abortion ban if legislation reached his desk. But in an example of how the conservative movement might proceed with or without Trump, anti-abortion activists note that the GOP platform still asserts that a fetus should have due process protections under the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. That constitutional argument is a roadmap for conservatives to seek a national abortion ban through federal courts. Trump has called for rolling back societal emphasis on diversity and for legal protections for LGBTQ plus citizens. Trump has called for ending diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in government institutions using federal funding as leverage. On transgender rights, Trump promises generally to end boys and girls sports, a practice he insists, without any evidence, is widespread. But his policies go well beyond standard applause lines from his rally speeches. Among other ideas, Trump would roll back the Biden administration's policy of extending Title IX civil rights protections to transgender students, and he would ask Congress to require that only two genders can be recognized at birth. So much for intersex people. The Federal Department of Education would be targeted for elimination in the second Trump administration. That does not mean that Trump wants Washington out of classrooms. He still proposes, among other maneuvers, using federal funding as leverage to pressure K-12 school systems to abolish tenure and adopt merit pay for teachers, and to scrap diversity programs at all levels of education. He calls for pulling federal funding for any school or program pushing critical race theory, gender ideology, or other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. In higher education, Trump proposes taking over accreditation processes for colleges, a move he describes as his secret weapon against the, quote, Marxist maniacs and lunatics he says control higher education. Trump takes aim at higher education endowments, saying he will collect billions and billions of dollars from schools via taxing, fining, and suing excessively large private university endowments at schools that do not comply with his edicts. That almost certainly would end up in protracted legal fights. As in other policy areas, Trump isn't actually proposing limiting federal power in higher education, but strengthening it. He calls for redirecting the confiscated endowment money into an online American academy offering college credentials to all Americans without tuition charges. It will be strictly non-political, and there will be no, quote, wokeness or jihadism allowed. None of that's going to be allowed, Trump said on November 1st, 2023. As he has since 2015 been calling, Trump calls for repealing the Affordable Care Act and its subsidized health insurance marketplaces, but he still has not proposed a replacement. In a September debate, he insisted he had the, quote, concepts of a plan. In the latter stages of the campaign, Trump played up his alliance with former presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a longtime critic of vaccines and of pesticides used in U.S. agriculture. Trump repeatedly told rally crowds that he would put Kennedy in charge of making America healthy again. Folks, before I sign off today's newscast, please allow me to take a moment of your time. Pennsylvania Equality Project will swiftly become more important to protecting LGBTQ plus civil rights through advocacy and education. PEP Radio will continue to be a voice for the community. However, to keep both of these working, we need your support. The changes in the coming Trump administration will devastate our community and invalidate our existence. We must show them that we will protect one another as much as we can. On our website, please click the Donate to PEP Radio button. Your financial support is greatly appreciated. If you've not already done so, please download the Live 365 app so that you can continue to follow PEP Radio wherever you are. That's the news at this hour. Now back to more music on PEP Radio.